I'm Dr. Elena Vasquez, and I've been the Chief of Radiology at Mercy General Hospital in Tucson, Arizona for 19 years, or at least I was, until I submitted my resignation 2 months ago. During my career, I've supervised over 60,000 X-ray procedures, diagnosed everything from hairline fractures to stage 4 bone cancers, and seen medical images that revealed the hidden truths inside the human body. But what I'm about to tell you about are 3 X-ray cases that showed me something no medical textbook could explain. Images so disturbing, they made me question not just modern medicine, but the very nature of what exists inside us all. These aren't isolated incidents. They're part of a pattern that's been haunting radiologists across the country, and no one is talking about it. Let me establish my credibility before I tell you about the impossible things I've witnessed, because what you're about to hear will challenge everything you believe about human anatomy. I graduated summa cum laude from Johns Hopkins Medical School in 1998, where I was awarded the Radiology Excellence Prize for my thesis on advanced imaging techniques in pediatric patients. I completed my residency in radiology at Massachusetts General Hospital under Dr. William Richardson, one of the most respected radiologists in the country, and earned my fellowship in pediatric radiology at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, specializing in complex skeletal abnormalities. I'm board certified in diagnostic radiology by the American Board of Radiology, hold advanced certifications in computed tomography and magnetic resonance imaging, and have published 47 peer-reviewed papers in prestigious medical journals, including Radiology, American Journal of Röntgenology, and Pediatric Radiology. My research has focused primarily on rare bone disorders, developmental skeletal abnormalities, and advanced imaging techniques for detecting microscopic changes in bone density and structure. Throughout my career, I've been invited to speak at international radiology conferences, served as a consultant for medical device manufacturers, developing new imaging technologies, and have been recognized 3 times by the American College of Radiology for excellence in diagnostic accuracy. I mention these credentials not to boast, but to establish that I am not prone to flights of medical fancy or misinterpretation of imaging data. My reputation was built on precision, scientific rigor, and an almost obsessive attention to anatomical detail. Mercy General Hospital serves the entire Sonoran Desert region of Arizona, encompassing a population of nearly 800,000 people across urban Tucson and rural communities scattered throughout the desert. As Chief of Radiology, I oversee a department of 23 X-ray technicians, 8 CT technologists, 6 MRI specialists, and 4 nuclear medicine technologists. We operate 5 digital radiography suites, equipped with the latest Siemens YSIO Max systems, 3 computed tomography scanners, 2 3.0 Tesla MRI machines, and a complete nuclear medicine facility. Our department processes approximately 150 X-ray examinations daily, ranging from routine chest films and bone injury assessments to complex pediatric cases and emergency trauma situations. I personally review every unusual case that comes through our doors, maintain final diagnostic authority on all imaging studies, and serve as the liaison between our department and the hospital's medical staff for complex diagnostic challenges. In nearly 2 decades of practice, I've encountered virtually every conceivable variation of human anatomy. I've seen foreign objects in impossible places, a wedding ring somehow embedded in a patient's femur after a car accident, surgical scissors left inside body cavities for decades without causing complications, and a live bullet that had migrated through a patient's circulatory system and lodged harmlessly in muscle tissue. I've diagnosed rare bone diseases that occur in fewer than 1 in a million people, including fibrodysplasia ossificans progressiva, where soft tissues gradually transform into bone, and melanohiostosis, where bone grows in flowing patterns that resemble candle wax. I've documented tumors that grew in patterns that defied oncological classification, bone formations that seemed to violate the basic principles of human skeletal development, and developmental abnormalities that challenged textbook descriptions of normal human anatomy. I've seen patients with additional ribs, fused vertebrae that somehow maintained full mobility, and bone densities that registered higher than any known human reference ranges. I thought I had witnessed every possible variation of what could appear on an X-ray film. I believed that 19 years of examining the internal structures of human bodies had prepared me for any anatomical possibility. I was convinced that modern medical imaging had revealed all the secrets the human form could contain. I was catastrophically, terrifyingly wrong. The human body, as taught in every medical school in the world, follows predictable patterns of development, structure, and function. The skeletal system, in particular, is considered one of the most stable and well understood aspects of human anatomy. Bones develop according to established genetic programming, reach maturity in early adulthood, and maintain their structure throughout life, with only minor variations for injury repair and age-related changes. These principles aren't theories, they're scientific facts supported by centuries of anatomical study, thousands of research papers, and millions of documented cases. The skeletal system doesn't spontaneously generate new structures. Bones don't grow according to mathematical principles. The human form doesn't reorganize itself according to engineering optimization. Or so I believed until December 3rd, 2023. What I discovered in the 3 cases I'm about to describe didn't just challenge medical science. It revealed that something has been living inside us all along. Something intelligent and purposeful. Something that occasionally decides to reveal itself through the penetrating gaze of X-ray radiation. These weren't medical anomalies or rare genetic variation. They were evidence of capabilities hidden within human anatomy that occasionally surface for reasons we couldn't begin to understand. The implications of what I witnessed extend far beyond radiology, or even medicine itself. If the human body contains hidden potential for self-modification, if something inside us possesses the intelligence to redesign our anatomy according to advanced mathematical principles, then everything we believe about human nature, consciousness, and our place in the universe might be fundamentally incorrect. The first case that would eventually destroy my career and change my understanding of human anatomy forever began on what seemed like an ordinary Sunday evening in early December. Arizona winters are generally mild, with daytime temperatures in the comfortable 70s and nights that rarely drop below 50 degrees. But that particular evening carried an unusual chill that seemed to penetrate not just the desert air, but somehow the hospital's walls themselves. Our night shift supervisor, Carmen Rodriguez, had been with the radiology department for 18 years. She had started as an entry-level technician, fresh from community college, and had worked her way up through dedication, natural talent, and an almost supernatural ability to capture perfect images, even in challenging circumstances. Carmen was one of those rare technicians who could spot abnormalities in X-rays that residents missed, who had an intuitive understanding of optimal patient positioning, and who could coax cooperation from the most difficult patients through a combination of gentle humor and professional competence. In all our years working together, Carmen had never called me in for anything that wasn't genuinely extraordinary. She had processed X-rays of gunshot victims whose bullets had taken impossible trajectories through their bodies, entering through the back, and somehow exiting through the chest without damaging any vital organs. She had imaged severe car accident cases where bones were shattered in ways that seemed to defy the physics of impact distribution, yet patients somehow survived with injuries that healed in miraculous ways. She had examined construction workers who had fallen from heights that should have killed them but somehow sustained only minor fractures that healed faster than medical textbooks suggested was possible. Carmen possessed the kind of clinical experience that couldn't be taught in schools, an intuitive understanding of human anatomy combined with technical expertise that allowed her to capture images that revealed details other technicians missed. She was scientifically minded, cautious with her language, and precise in her descriptions of unusual findings. Most importantly, She understood the difference between interesting medical cases and impossible medical cases. My pager buzzed at 10:17 p.m. while I was at home in my study, reviewing radiology reports for Monday morning's departmental conference. The message was from Carmen, and the urgency in her typically professional communication made my blood run cold. "Dr. Vasquez, need you here immediately. Emergency chest X-ray showing anatomy that cannot exist in living human. Patient stable, but images violate everything we know about skeletal structure. This is beyond unusual. This is impossible. Please come now." I had never seen Carmen use words like cannot exist or violates everything we know in any professional communication. She was trained to describe findings objectively, to avoid definitive statements about medical impossibility, and to present unusual cases with appropriate scientific caution. For her to use such absolute language about anatomical impossibility suggested that she had encountered something that challenged her fundamental understanding of human anatomy. The drive from my home in the foothills to Mercy General normally took 15 minutes through the quiet Sunday night streets of Tucson. That evening, the journey felt both endless and far too short. Endless because my mind raced through possibilities of what could have prompted such an urgent summons, and far too short because I wasn't prepared for whatever awaited me at the hospital. The desert night was unusually cold, with a crystalline clarity to the air that made the stars seem brighter and closer than normal. As I drove through the sleeping city, I found myself considering what could possibly have rattled Carmen so severely. In our years working together, she had shown me X-rays of patients who had swallowed entire sets of silverware, children who had somehow managed to lodge action figures inside their esophagus, and elderly patients whose bones showed wear patterns that suggested they had lived far longer than their documented ages. None of those cases had prompted such an urgent, almost panicked message. When I arrived at Mercy General, the hospital's usual nighttime calm felt different, charged with intention I couldn't identify. Defluorescent lights in the radiology department seemed harsher than normal, casting sharper shadows in the corridors and creating an almost surreal atmosphere that made familiar spaces feel alien. The night security guard, Marcus Thompson, greeted me with an unusual expression of concern. "Dr. Vasquez, Carmen's been waiting for you. She seems pretty shaken up by something," he said, his voice carrying the kind of worry that comes from years of working in a hospital and recognizing when medical professionals encounter something beyond their experience. I found Carmen standing outside X-ray Suite 3, holding a manila folder containing X-ray films pressed against her chest like a protective shield. Her usually steady hands were trembling visibly, and her face was pale under the harsh hospital lighting. Carmen was not easily rattled. She had maintained composure during mass casualty events, worked efficiently through chaotic emergency situations, and handled distraught families with professional grace. To see her so obviously shaken suggested that whatever she had discovered transcended normal medical challenges. "Dr. Vasquez," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I've been staring at these images for 37 minutes. I've run complete diagnostics on all our equipment twice. Every component has been tested and recalibrated. I've examined the digital imaging sensors, verified the X-ray generator calibrations, and checked the image processing software for any possible malfunctions. I've recalibrated the positioning systems and verified that our exposure parameters are within normal ranges." She paused, taking a shaky breath before continuing. "Everything is functioning perfectly. Our machines are operating within manufacturer specifications. The digital imaging system is producing clear, accurate representations of internal anatomy. Patient positioning was textbook perfect. There are no technical explanations for what I'm seeing." Her voice dropped even lower, barely audible in the quiet corridor. "But what's on this film? It shouldn't exist inside a living human being. It can't exist according to everything we know about skeletal anatomy and human development, and yet the images are clear, detailed, and undeniably real." The patient was Sophia Blackwood, a 29-year-old elementary school art teacher from downtown Tucson. She taught 4th and 5th grade students at Desert Willow Elementary School, where she was known for her innovative approaches to combining art education with science and mathematics concepts. Sophia lived alone in a converted warehouse apartment in the Arts District, where she maintained a personal studio for her own artistic work alongside her teaching responsibilities. She had been brought to our emergency department by her roommate, Jennifer Walsh, after experiencing what she described as the most intense chest pain of my entire life, that had started suddenly while she was grading student artwork in her apartment around 7:30 p.m. The pain had begun as what felt like severe muscle tension but had rapidly intensified into something she described as architectural changes happening inside my ribcage. The attending physician, Dr. Michael Torres, had initially suspected a pulmonary embolism or possible cardiac event given the sudden onset and severity of Sophia's symptoms. He had ordered routine chest X-rays to rule out pneumonia, collapsed lung, or other respiratory complications, along with blood work to check cardiac enzymes and D-dimer levels to assess for blood clots. When I first met Sophia in X-ray Suite 3, she appeared completely normal from external examination. She was conscious and alert, though clearly experiencing significant discomfort. Her vital signs were remarkably stable: blood pressure 118/76 mmHg, heart rate 72 beats per minute, respiratory rate 16 breaths per minute, oxygen saturation 98% on room air, temperature 98.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Her breathing was regular and unlabored, though she frequently pressed her hand against the center of her chest and described sensations that sent chills down my spine. "It started about 3 hours ago," Sophia told me, her voice strained but coherent and thoughtful. "I was sitting at my kitchen table with student art projects spread everywhere. They had been working on geometric design projects combining mathematics and visual arts. I was drinking coffee and writing comments on their work, focusing on how well they had incorporated mathematical principles into their artistic designs." She paused, her eyes taking on a distant quality as she recalled the experience. "Suddenly I felt this expansion inside my chest, not like breathing deeply, but like something that had been compressed or folded up my entire life, was finally being allowed to unfold and take its proper shape. The sensation was familiar somehow, like remembering a dream you thought you had forgotten." Her description became more unsettling as she continued. "The pain isn't exactly pain in the traditional sense, it's more like growing pains, but deep inside where growing pains should never happen in an adult. It feels like construction is taking place inside my ribcage, like someone is building scaffolding or framework according to plans I've never seen but somehow recognize." She looked directly at me, her expression mixing confusion with a strange sense of anticipation. "Dr. Vasquez, I know this sounds impossible, but I can feel shapes forming inside me, geometric patterns that are somehow familiar, like mathematical concepts I studied in college, but applied to my own anatomy. It's as if my body is solving an equation I didn't know existed." I assured Sophia that chest X-rays would help us understand what was causing her unusual sensations, and that we'd have answers shortly. As a radiologist with nearly 2 decades of experience diagnosing everything from simple fractures to complex developmental abnormalities, I was confident that whatever was happening inside her chest would have a logical medical explanation. Nothing in my extensive medical training, years of clinical experience, or knowledge of human anatomy could have prepared me for what those X-ray images would reveal. Carmen led me to the digital viewing station, where she had loaded Sophia's X-ray files onto our high-resolution monitors. The main display showed the frontal chest X-ray at full resolution, and at first glance, everything appeared normal according to standard radiological assessment criteria. The lung fields were clear and symmetrical, showing normal pulmonary vasculature and no signs of infection, fluid accumulation, or mass lesions. The heart appeared properly positioned with a normal cardiothoracic ratio, suggesting no cardiac enlargement. The rib cage showed symmetrical structure with normal bone density and spacing. The clavicles and scapula appeared normal in position and structure, but as my trained eye began its systematic examination of the image, moving methodically from the upper lung fields downward through established protocols for chest X-ray interpretation, I began to notice details that made no biological sense whatsoever. My initial assessment had focused on the major anatomical landmarks and obvious pathological possibilities, but closer examination revealed structures that challenged everything I understood about human skeletal anatomy. Interwoven throughout Sophia's ribcage, following no anatomical pattern I had ever encountered in medical school, residency training, or 19 years of clinical practice, was what appeared to be an elaborate network of geometric structures. These formations weren't additional ribs, abnormal bone growths, or any variation of normal skeletal development. They were perfectly symmetrical, crystalline formations that seemed to possess their own internal logic and mathematical design principles. The structures appeared to be composed of the same calcium-dense material as normal bone tissue, showing identical radiographic opacity and characteristics. However, they formed patterns that resembled complex mathematical equations given physical form rather than biological structures. There were triangular lattices connecting her ribs in ways that seemed to provide additional structural support according to engineering principles rather than evolutionary development. Pentagonal formations surrounded her heart without interfering with its function, creating what appeared to be protective geometric caging. Spiral patterns followed her spine but existed in anatomical spaces where no structures should be present according to human developmental biology. "Carmen," I said, my voice sounding strange and distant even to myself, "run the lateral chest X-ray again. Maximum resolution, and I want you to adjust the exposure settings to enhance bone detail. Use the highest contrast settings available." As Carmen prepared Sophia for the second imaging session, I continued studying the initial films with growing fascination and horror. The geometric structures weren't random formations. They followed precise mathematical relationships that reminded me of fractal patterns I had studied in undergraduate mathematics courses, crystallographic structures from materials science, and architectural principles I had seen in advanced engineering designs. Each formation seemed to be part of a larger, more complex design that was both beautiful and deeply disturbing in its mathematical perfection. The lateral X-ray confirmed and amplified what the frontal view had revealed. From the side angle, the structures became even more distinct and intricate, revealing a three-dimensional complexity that hadn't been apparent in the frontal projection. They formed an elaborate network inside Sophia's chest that seemed to exist in perfect harmony with her existing anatomy, while following completely different architectural and design principles. The most disturbing aspect of these formations was their obvious intelligence. This wasn't random bone growth or pathological development. These structures had been designed according to advanced mathematical principles and engineering optimization. They suggested not just knowledge of structural engineering, but intimate understanding of Sophia's specific anatomy and the precise modifications needed to enhance her skeletal framework. Most terrifyingly of all, the structures appeared to be actively growing and becoming more complex in real time. I instructed Carmen to begin taking a series of X-rays at 5-minute intervals, carefully documenting any changes in the mysterious geometric structures. What we discovered over the next hour violated every principle of human anatomy, physiology, and biological development that formed the foundation of modern medicine. The geometric formations were not static anatomical abnormalities. They were dynamic, expanding, and becoming more mathematically sophisticated with each successive image. Between the first and second X-ray, taken only 5 minutes apart, new triangular connections had formed between existing structures, creating additional support bridges that followed principles of optimal load distribution. By the third image, an entirely new spiral pattern had appeared along Sophia's left side, extending from her 4th rib down to her 10th rib in a perfect Fibonacci sequence. "Dr. Vasquez," Carmen whispered, her voice filled with scientific fascination and underlying terror, "look at the upper right quadrant of the 4th image compared to our initial film. That pentagonal structure has grown by at least 3 centimeters in 20 minutes. And here," she indicated another area with a trembling finger, "this connecting bridge between her 6th and 7th ribs wasn't present in any of the earlier films. It's appeared completely formed in the last 15 minutes. She was absolutely correct. We were witnessing real-time bone formation occurring at a rate that was not just unusual, it was physically impossible according to everything known about bone physiology. Normal bone growth occurs at microscopic rates measurable over weeks or months, not centimeters per hour. Furthermore, these structures were growing according to mathematical principles rather than biological ones, creating forms that were more architectural than anatomical. The precision was staggering. Each new formation connected to existing structures with tolerances that would be impressive in manufactured components. The mathematical relationships between different geometric elements followed advanced principles of structural engineering, load optimization, and material science. Someone or something with extensive knowledge of both human anatomy and advanced engineering was redesigning Sophia's skeletal system in real time. I called Dr. Torres immediately, requesting a comprehensive re-examination of our patient. "Michael, I need you to examine the Blackwood patient again, full neurological assessment, complete cardiovascular evaluation, and check for any external signs of recent trauma, surgical scars, or any unusual physical symptoms. Also, I want complete blood work, including inflammatory markers, bone metabolism indicators, and anything else that might explain rapid skeletal changes." While Dr. Torres conducted his examination, I continued analyzing the progression of X-ray images with growing amazement and horror. A disturbing pattern was emerging that suggested intelligence far beyond normal biological processes. The geometric structures weren't just growing randomly, they were systematically optimizing Sophia's existing skeletal framework according to advanced engineering principles. The new formations appeared to be reinforcing stress concentration points in her ribcage, providing additional protection for her vital organs through geometric distribution systems, and creating structural improvements that engineering analysis would suggest, but evolutionary biology had never attempted. The mathematical precision suggested not just intelligence, but intelligence with access to advanced knowledge of both human anatomy and structural engineering. Dr. Torres's comprehensive examination revealed nothing abnormal from external assessment. Sophia's chest showed no signs of recent surgery, trauma, or any external indication of the dramatic internal changes we were documenting through serial X-ray imaging. Her blood pressure remained stable, her heart rate showed no signs of stress, and her oxygen saturation levels were actually improving as the structures developed. Most remarkably, her pain had begun to decrease significantly as the geometric formations grew more complex. She reported feeling more balanced and structurally supported than I ever have in my entire life. But the X-ray images told a story that challenged the fundamental principles of human biology and suggested possibilities that medical science had never considered. By the 6th X-ray in our sequence, taken 45 minutes after the initial images, the structures had evolved into something that was simultaneously breathtaking in its mathematical beauty and terrifying in its implications for human anatomy. The geometric formations had created a secondary support system inside Sophia's chest that followed principles of advanced architectural engineering and structural optimization. The patterns resembled complex mathematical concepts I remembered from my undergraduate studies in biomedical engineering: golden ratio spirals that appeared throughout natural systems, fractal geometries that repeated at different scales, and crystalline structures that occur naturally in minerals but had never been observed in living tissue. Each formation was perfectly symmetrical with dimensional tolerances that would be remarkable in precision manufactured components, but were impossible in biological systems. The engineering implications were staggering. Stress analysis of the new structural network showed optimal load distribution that would significantly enhance Sophia's resistance to chest trauma. The geometric formations created redundant support systems that would maintain structural integrity even if individual components were damaged. The spiral patterns appeared to enhance respiratory efficiency by optimizing the mechanical advantage of her intercostal muscles. Sophia reported no pain during this transformation. In fact, she seemed to be experiencing something approaching euphoria as the structures continued developing. Dr. Vasquez, she told me during our 7th imaging session, her voice filled with wonder and confusion. I've struggled with chronic back pain and breathing difficulties since I was a teenager. I've never been able to maintain good posture for extended periods, and I've always had trouble taking really deep breaths, especially during physical exertion. She paused, taking what appeared to be the deepest, most satisfying breath of her life. But right now, I feel like my body is finally designed correctly, like these structures are completing something that was always supposed to be there, but never developed properly. I feel like I'm experiencing what perfect human anatomy should feel like. This was medically impossible on multiple levels. Adult bone structures don't spontaneously generate. The human skeletal system reaches maturity in early adulthood, and new bone formation only occurs in response to fractures, specific pathological conditions, or hormonal influences that take months or years to produce visible changes. What we were witnessing defied every principle of human development, bone physiology, and anatomical possibility. The mathematical precision of the formations suggested intelligence with knowledge of advanced engineering, materials, science, and intimate understanding of human anatomy. The optimization patterns indicated not just intelligence, but intelligence with specific knowledge of Sophia's individual anatomical weaknesses and the precise modifications needed to enhance her structural integrity. Yet the evidence was undeniable, captured in high-resolution digital images that showed every detail of the impossible transformation taking place inside a living human being. Our final X-ray of the night, taken 6.5 hours after the initial images, showed the completion of whatever extraordinary process had been occurring inside Sophia's chest. The geometric structures had developed into an elaborate three-dimensional network that perfectly complemented her existing anatomy, while following entirely different design principles based on advanced mathematical and engineering concepts. The formations provided additional structural support that optimized her skeletal framework according to principles of mechanical engineering rather than evolutionary biology. Stress distribution patterns that would normally concentrate force on specific vulnerable points in her rib cage were now distributed evenly across the geometric network, creating a structural system that was both more resilient and more efficient than normal human anatomy. Her lung capacity appeared to have increased significantly due to more efficient space utilization within her chest cavity. The geometric formations created mechanical advantages that enhanced respiratory efficiency, allowing her to achieve greater oxygen exchange with less muscular effort. Her posture had improved dramatically, supported by the new structural network that provided spinal alignment optimization. Most remarkably, every chronic physical problem Sophia had mentioned, back pain, breathing difficulties, poor posture, and limited endurance, had completely resolved during the transformation. I feel like I've been given a completely new body, she told me as we prepared her discharge papers. Not different, but perfected, like someone took my existing design and optimized it according to principles I never knew existed, but somehow recognize as exactly right. Sophia's final discharge X-ray showed that the geometric structures had stabilized and appeared to be fully integrated with her existing skeletal system. There was no indication of inflammation, infection, foreign body reaction, or any negative physiological response to the new formations. From every medical perspective we could measure, blood chemistry, vital signs, respiratory function, and structural integrity, she was significantly healthier than when she had arrived. Her complete blood work showed no abnormalities, no signs of accelerated bone metabolism, and no indicators of the massive physiological changes that had obviously occurred. It was as if her body had always contained these structures, and they had simply become visible through X-ray imaging. But fundamental questions remained that haunted me long after Sophia left the hospital, questions that would ultimately destroy my career and change my understanding of human nature itself. Sophia Blackwood left Mercy General Hospital with geometric bone structures that had grown inside her chest in 7 hours, optimizing her anatomy according to mathematical principles that don't exist in medical textbooks. But she was only the first patient to show me that the human body contains hidden possibilities that medical science has never suspected. The next case would reveal something far more disturbing, evidence that we might not be alone inside our own bodies, and that something intelligent has been waiting inside us, using us, preparing for something we couldn't possibly understand. 3 weeks after Sophia's discharge, Carmen approached me with trembling hands and another impossible X-ray. Marcus Rivera, a 45-year-old mechanic, had come in complaining of abdominal pain. His X-ray showed something that made Sophia's geometric bones look ordinary. Inside Marcus's torso, replacing his intestines, was what appeared to be a complex network of tubes and chambers made of organic material, but following technological blueprints. The structures pulsed rhythmically, processing something that wasn't food. When I examined the images closer, I realized they formed a filtration system more advanced than anything human engineering had ever created. Dr. Vasquez, Marcus said when I questioned him, "I haven't eaten food in 2 weeks. I don't need to anymore. I'm absorbing energy directly from somewhere else." The third case arrived 5 days later. Sarah Kim, a 33-year-old librarian, came in after her skull began changing shape. Her X-ray revealed her brain cavity had been completely restructured. New chambers had formed, connected by pathways that resembled circuit boards made of neural tissue. Her intelligence had increased exponentially. She spoke in mathematical equations and claimed she could hear the network awakening. I tried to report these cases to medical authorities, but every file I submitted disappeared from hospital systems overnight. Other doctors claimed they couldn't see the abnormalities I documented. My colleagues began avoiding me, whispering about stress and delusions. On my final day at Mercy General, I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single X-ray image of my own chest. The geometric structures were already growing inside me, beautiful and terrifying, following the same mathematical principles I had witnessed in my patients. The transformation had already begun. We are not alone in our bodies. We never were. Something has been waiting inside humanity, and now it's ready to reveal itself.